Welcome, everyone. It's Tuesday, April 27th. The year is 2021. This would be the executive committee for the Peoria County Board. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of March 23rd and April 8th as one item? I see Dr. Blair and Mr. Rosenbaum on the second. Thank you, Paul. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor, I miss Bastigia. Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And that would be recorded as unanimous. Is there a portable mic? As opposed to, I don't know, doing this the way we always do, which is make people come up front, I'm going to go out to you. Hi, Miss Williams. Miss Clefman, hi. I understand it's your 15th anniversary. Surprise, surprise. Should I say something before I ask you to say something? Sure. We love you to death and appreciate all the hard hours you put in. I know because my office is closest to hers, and you're as diligent a team member as ever. So thank you for that service. And thank you for surviving these rough years with us. We're kind of a rough bunch, but all 18 of us prize the work you and the team do on the 5th floor. So we want to say thank you for that. And this is for being here for 15 years. So
thank you very much. I just want to thank you very much. It's been, I've enjoyed, I love working here. I love the people I work with up in my office. I love the people, everyone in here. It's just been the greatest group of people to ever work with. And thank you.
Everyone, Jan. I'll take this back. At informational, Mr. Sorrell, do you want to take some of these?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. From a Springdale perspective, there are no new minutes, although I believe that they did meet. Ms. Daly isn't here as chairwoman of the Springdale board, but Ms. Pastucha is here, so if there's anything that she wanted to share, I'd turn the floor over to her before I move on to any of the other informational items.
I do have some big news. We are having a first annual race. It's a 5K. It's a race for preservation. It's going to be taking place on Saturday, May 8th at 8 o'clock. I can send out the link for registration. This is a time slot that used to be taken by the Susan G. Komen race that Saturday right before Mother's Day, and that's no longer happening. So we saw an opportunity to take that time slot. I know a lot of people kind of have a tradition of getting together on that Mother's Day weekend and going for a walk. So we thought that would be a good opportunity. And so all the funds are going to be used to help maintain Springdale Cemetery, help with some of the monument restoration work that needs to be done. And just to let you know that the county is a partial funder of the cemetery, which is owned by the city of Peoria. So please come out and support Springdale Cemetery and see where some of our county money goes. It's a beautiful place. Some people think it might be kind of weird to hang out in a cemetery, but it's really a park-like setting, and it's just beautiful. It's right in my backyard, and I walk there all the time. I just love it. So come out and walk with us on Saturday, May 8th.
Thank you, Ms. Pastuccia. Did you say it was a walk or a run?
Sorry, it is a 5K run, and then there's also a walk that you could also do if you are not a runner.
Thank you. Just trying to drum up business for you. Any questions for the representative from Springdale? Seeing none. Scott?
Sure. Under the category of monthly CDAP gap macro other loan report, there are no outstanding gap loans. We have, as of May 1st, we only have two outstanding loans, that one being for hair racing and the other being for Treskers. They are current based on the amortization schedule. What I would like to point out on page 9 of your packet, for those of you that were around the Horseshoe in April of 2013, this body approved a loan with Quest Charter Academy after a lot of hard work from former CAT CEO Glenn Barton. They made their final payment on May 1st of this year, so that loan is now paid in full. That, Mr. Chairman, is the loan report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Next. We would be at resolutions. Mr. Dillon on the first and the second.
Sorry, Chairman, I had one quick question.
Oh,
before.
sure, go ahead.
That's what, and maybe, I don't know if it's for the auditor, but I would assume that Scott could answer the questions. But if you go through the contractuals over $200 or over $2,000, and
The checks.
I'm
Yes.
just not on some committees, so maybe it'd be something I missed. But why would there be a $25,000 check to Carlson Jewelry and a $25,000 check to Perfect Pair Boutique, which is a clothing store?
I'm going to take a guess that has to do with the state grants funds through.
It could be any number of
Steady.
offices. We will, yes, downstate small business stabilization grants. Those dollars came to
Okay.
us, and then we're a pass-through.
I remember those grants.
That makes sense.
Approved but not funded. They just approved 3 for payment just a few
That
weeks
makes
ago.
sense.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there was one other one, I think that's been a repeat one, which doesn't make sense to me, but a Planet Home Lending.
Mr. Dillon, do you remember off the top of your head what the value of?
$21,536. Just sounds like a home loan corporation.
That one I'll have to research. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but we'll get you an answer on
I
that.
feel like that's been a repeat one on there.
Okay. Yeah, we can easily run a vendor history report and see what that is for you.
They just off the top don't make sense. The other ones are construction companies, service contractuals, and everything else. So
Yeah, understood.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ricker, on the motion to approve. Oh, you have a question? I'm so quick to get to the resolution. Go ahead, Mr. Ricker. I got Paul over here. He's got a load to deliver.
Oh, Paul's got work to do, huh?
Yeah.
I had a question on the auditor's report on page 12, which has got the little table, the monthly expenditures and number of checks audited. And the expenditures by month, January, February, March. March is 50% of what the other 2 months were. The same relative number of checks and invoices, but the actual expenditures. So trying to understand, was there something dramatic different, or, and maybe the auditor would be able to answer that question of the same volume of, but half of the amount paid in that month. Seems like maybe we're missing something, or it's a trend.
Great question, Mr. Ricker. I don't see the auditor, but I do see one of the assistant auditors from the office in the audience. Surely be up to the chairman if he would want to recognize her.
Would you be able to answer that, or would you like to then come to the mic, please?
Have to turn it on, or
Yeah, there's a little button on top, a little slide switch.
yeah, I've believe it's a combination of losing Barb and COVID hitting. So a bunch of smaller checks. In February, we had a ton of foreclosures, I think we were handling. Some very large checks went out in February. So, yeah, March, just smaller checks.
Thank you, Mr. Ricker. Mr. Dillon.
Do you mean by losing Barb that you can't process as much? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that was part of it. When she left, you know, I've been here 2 years. I can't do the same as a 30-year employee, trying my best. So we did process quite a few checks, but they were in smaller amounts. So that's the difference between the $4 million in February and the $2 million in March.
I just want to make sure as a county we're staying current with our suppliers and folks that we are due payment to. We're not holding back or, you know, delaying payment on a timely basis. That was one of my concerns.
I have no information to help you with that, but we'll inquire. Thank you. Thanks for helping us out. Can I go to the resolution? Oh, Ms. Pastusha.
The February report is still in our iPads. If you look at the top 4 items, I think, or the top 3 items, I think that might answer your question. One of them was Peoria City County Health, Emergency Telephone, and Peoria County IT. Those are the top. Those were all above $500,000 payments. Is that?
Those are big checks, yes.
Yeah. Those were expenditures by fund. But anyway, that February report's still in there.
Anyone else? Okay, now we'd be at resolutions. Would anyone like to put the resolution on the floor regarding the executive compensation? Thank you, Mr. Fennell. And thank you, Mr. Dillon, on the second. This returns to us for consideration after our last board meeting and I think subsequent executive committee meeting. I will impose on Jenny to provide us the clarity between the accepted consensus from that meeting and this contract in terms per se.
Thank you. The contract was accepted as proposed by you all back to the terms that were initially proposed the first time around. So that's the version that you have in front of you. We also cleaned up, I think someone had caught the agenda briefing and resolution had a retroactive date back to 2020. So we got on the resolution and the agenda briefing that date corrected, but the contract itself is back to that original offer was accepted. So that's what you have. And happy to answer any questions on the specifics, but I know you all are probably familiar at this point with the original terms.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions from the members? Hello, Brandy. All right, hearing none. Resolution on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same sign. I'll record that as unanimous, please. Thank you very much. And since Mr. Rosenbaum has talked to me first, I'll go to public safety for that agenda report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had 3 resolutions today. The first one was electronic and alcohol monitoring services. That's for the court service, or the courts. It was for 148,000, I believe, and that's already in their budget. That passed unanimously. That was for the different types of monitoring services, DUI, which is GPS monitoring, or that's it for the home detention, I guess, and then the one with DUIs, they've got the testing so the people can't make sure they're not drinking. The second one was with the cost study negotiation of per diem rate for the United States Marshal Service with the sheriff. He's wanting to get this company to do a fee study for us, so they can, and they will help negotiate the contract with the U.S. Marshal Service. So hopefully we can raise our rates at the county jail. And the third one was for the MEG unit, the sheriff's, the keeper of the purse, I guess, at the Metropolitan Airport Authority lease agreement. And that is one of the, in case something happens with the MEG unit, in case it isn't funded by enough different municipalities, whatever, we can get out of that agreement in 60 days. So all of them passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosebaum. Any question for the chairperson of the committee? Thank you. Anybody else need to scoot? Okay, then I'll go backwards. County Health, Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had no resolutions today. However, we met early. We met at 10:30 today at the Health Department. We had a presentation from Beth, which is our ROE, on what her department does. Very informative. Thank you, Beth. Really appreciate that. We also did a tour of the Health Department, and that really brought, I think, a lot of good discussion with the committee. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Honorable Chairwoman of the committee? All right. Seeing none. Mr. Dillon.
We had two resolutions. First one for Becky Murphy was a garage had burnt down. She needs to rebuild it, but she's a industrial property, and it's in residential. It's in the Mossville area, Jim, where some of those properties are located. So to rebuild it, she needs to be in compliance. It does fit the use of the other areas, even though it's not zoned right correctly as a residential. But so that was approved. And then the other one, a petition of Linda Martin, was a 30-acre tract that was split into 3 10-acre tracts. I believe that's Mr. Elsasser's district for future home sites that the owner would like to sell, and then, or Steve's district, sorry. And then, thank you, Dr. Blair. And then next month, we'll have our typical zoning stuff, but we will have upcoming adopting the newer building codes, which still aren't current building codes to per se. They're going from 2014 to 2018 building code, and I think the 2017 electrical code, which would then put us on par with the cities already adopted. I believe Tazewell has already or is in the process, and Washington similar. So that would put us on par with the rest of the municipalities around here. And I believe Kathy didn't announce it, but she's already been in contact and will be speaking to like the Home Builders Association and everybody. So people are aware that this is coming, and so it's not a surprise to anybody.
Any questions for Mr. Dillon? Seeing none. Mr. Dillon, on that announcement about those upcoming discussions, is there an industry, fair-minded industry study on what the expected costs, if any, are to the purchaser of projects as they relate to the changes in the codes?
I'm sure there's some sort of study on their basis. Not all the codes adapt everything in there. Like the national code would have sprinkler systems in homes. Most of those leave that portion out and don't mandate that, around here anyway. Most of the codes have just gotten stricter on energy performance, which then they'll give you a study that says that you'll have to buy back by putting in a higher R value on your walls, that you'll return that. So a lot of the codes changes in the recent future are more aligned with green energy and savings or building practices. But for the most part, to build a house is still lumber, nails. I mean, certain things you can change, but the code is always lagging from a government perspective. There's newer codes out there, but we're always follow about, and I think when Paul was on when we had this long discussion, is you're always about 2 to 3 years behind. And historically speaking, most of the stuff, there's not going to be any groundbreaking in it. Most of the contractors are already performing at these high levels so we don't usually pass ours first. We let the city of Peoria pass theirs first, and then we typically follow along. And that's one of the big things that we always hear is uniformity. If I build here, I'd like the same practice in Tazewell, the same practice in Peoria. So long answer short, I don't know if there's things, but I would assume there's studies of what the cost analysis, and Kathy's not here to break down what the big changes are.
Ask the manager to see what he can find. Thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate your time on that, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Ricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Ways and Means, we had 2 resolutions. The first one was the monthly delinquent taxes, which we did have one amendment to that. We had one line item in there that we removed because the city of Peoria approached us they had that property set for demolition, and because of that, we agreed to pull it back to the trustee on their behalf, and otherwise we passed that with the rest of the properties and the sale on it. The other resolution was the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, or better known as PACE. So this is the program that we approved back in 2019, that we would agree as a county to support this program. It essentially provides commercial property owners the ability to access funds through private lenders, but to put it on their tax statement for payment for doing clean energy improvements to their commercial property, if it's water or if it's energy from solar or other processes. So it gives a property owner another opportunity for funding. The funding does not come from the county or the public sector. The funding comes from private. Our role is really in between to help process it and put it on the tax bill. So in November of 2020, we did approve an administrator for it. So we have an administrator that will administrate the applications from commercial property owners, make sure they're in compliance with the energy improvements, and then if everything's in compliance, they bring it to the county. We have an oversight committee here that reviews it one more time to make sure it's in compliance, and then it goes to the funder, the organization or the private that would be providing the funds to set it up in the system. So we approved the process to start and implement and roll that out now so contractors can start using the service. So it's been a long time coming, but we'll see how we do in providing that service for our commercial owners. Any questions on that?
Ms. Pastusha.
And as part of this, advertising to make sure that people know that this is available, or what's the plan for outreach?
That's a good question. We did discuss that, I guess not in committee. I discussed it with staff prior. There will be some communication. It's already out on the county website now, is in the sustainability section. So you can go there. It links you to the Illinois department where PACE is organized at the state of Illinois. As far as other outright communications, I think we're going to put it out there on some of our social media platforms and some of the other platforms that the communications team has in place. So that was that's the answer at this point as far as outreach. I'll stop at that.
Do you think that this is going to be, are we going to make companies aware of this? So the person that brought this to our attention was someone who wants to use this as a tool for sales to say, this is an option for funding for this project that you want to do, and it's going to help the business, gain a client. It's going to help the client have a way to pay for a project. Is there going to be outreach to companies in that way?
I don't think we defined that, but that's a great ask. I think we'll go ahead and ask the sustainability department and our staff to look at communications out to not only the property owners, but to contractors who'd be providing that level of service to the property owners. So I think that's a good recommendation.
Who's responsible for maintaining this list of qualified contractors for commercial purposes?
I don't know if the list of qualified contractors was in the scope of this. This was more of a program for commercial property owners who wanted to improve their properties. I don't think it was a program for contractors per se. I maybe defer to Mr. Sorrell.
That's correct, Mr. Ricker. This is a debt financing vehicle for a commercial property owner to finance an energy-related improvement to their structure, to their business. So, yes, one marketing component is to businesses themselves. One marketing component is to contractors that would be doing that work for them.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, this review committee is a county group of folks?
It's internal. It's internal staff. There's also.
So what are you going to be asked to review, and how do we know whether they're using licensed contractors? Who does that vetting?
Well, there's no requirement to use licensed contractors because there's no taxpayer dollars being spent. It's all private dollars being spent. We're merely the conduit for the debt, and then the method in which the debt is repaid to the private debt issuer, and that being the property taxes.
I guess what really makes me curious is if we're going to be the gatekeeper of whether this is qualified or not, and our own codes require you to use licensed contractors, and this is ostensibly for commercial applications. Knowing who's who in the licensed contractor world to protect the consumer, I think, is something that it makes me nervous that we're blessing something without knowing if you're wearing shoes. Okay, it's we got a belt, we got suspenders and a hat here, so there's a qualified buyer, there's a treasurer, there's a committee. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of this, but it seems to me that the commercial concern should be concerned that they're working with a licensed contractor, and our own codes require it, the city requires it. So I need a little help on that, because it seems to be a gap in the review process. Right. If you're saying we just have to sign off on A or B, I would think, given our codes as we require, that there's a C to that, which is approved contractors.
So I would say that's more appropriately handled through the building permitting process versus this financing process.
Well, without a note from planning that it's an approved project, and that the vendors are approved, I think there's just a little piece missing here.
In one of the documents that Becca had us review, you have to be a registered contractor with IECA.
So they have to go through a process with the company that's our program facilitator or whatever to become a contractor. So they have to be approved through IECA.
I don't know who that is.
That's the Illinois Energy Conservation Authority. That's the one that's doing facilitating the financing.
That's the program administrator that you've awarded a contract to be the program administrator. You did that in November.
I have enough questions still. I don't want to tie the whole meeting up. Would you consider holding this off another month till I can understand what our role is more clearly, and that the consumer has the right understanding? The imprimatur of the county of Peoria on some process says something to me, and it says that the rules are correct, that people are following all of them. I feel like there's just like some backside of this that, you know, I don't know who IECA is, and I don't know that they know which licensed electrical subcontractors exist here in the county of Peoria. So for fear that some unlicensed people could show up, I'm just asking the question from a consumer quality standpoint. I'm not really meaning to jam it up, and I don't think we can approve it conditioned on something, because that something is this process that we're doing.
Let's see if we can maybe answer the concerns you have in the next week or so before full board, and if we
Sure.
don't,
Yeah,
if we're not able to, that goes to any board member. If any board member has a concern that needs to be addressed before full board, I'd ask, let's bring that forward, bring it to me, and then I'll bring in sustainability department along with the administrator, and we'll make sure we answer the concerns, because they're all valid. So I don't know if we'll figure out if you want to communicate as to exactly which concerns. I have the one concern about the quality of contractors for our residents, commercial property owners, to make sure that we're meeting some expectations, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Counsel.
I was just gonna point out there's 136 pages in that packet. If anyone wants to look at that committee's packet, I've done a review of it, but the program guidelines is probably the document that is going to interest people the most. That is what IECA, their requirements to even join or to apply for the program. They have a pre-qualification step and then a qualification step. So they are the ones that would be vetting it and then giving it to the county's review committee, who does have then the ultimate blessing. But that program administrator would, as I understand it, be vetting people for us. So that program guidelines might be a good place for people to look who have questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I appreciate your willingness to help me feel safe about it. So could we get like a substitute motion?
We need a motion here. I mean, we already did that in committee.
So you're not saying have a special meeting before the next county board meeting?
I would say answer questions of existing board members who have concerns or open questions. I'd be more than willing to make sure we answer those questions, so when it comes to full board in the next full board meeting, all the board members are well informed and make a good decision.
Yeah. And if not, we can always defer it for a
And
month.
we can defer it if we have unanswered questions, we're not comfortable bringing it to full board. But I do like council's recommendation. I did read through all of it, a lot of legal terms in 136 pages, and I did lean to legal, knowing our counselor does a good job at the legalese terms. I looked at more of the effect to the county and what's our responsibility and what's the responsibility of the program for our consumers. So I did review it, but I'm one set of eyes, so if other people have questions, the more people look at it, we may vet up some other questions we need to have addressed. And so my proposal would be read it first, bring back questions you may have. We'll see if we can address them before the full board meeting effectively. If not, we can pull that from the full board agenda and take it back to committee next month. Is that a fair proposal?
I'll vote no on it because I don't like voting yes and then going and reading looking up
Well,
the questions.
we're not voting.
Yeah, we're voting yes to get it out of committee, right? This is a resolution to,
It already got out of committee.
oh, I'm sorry. It's on your report. I understand now.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you. I got lost in space here. All right. Would you be willing to meet with those of us that have questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that's your last resolution then? Got it. Sorry about that, Steve. Mr. Salzer.
Mr. Salzer, could you turn your microphone on, please?
Turn on, okay. I thought I had it on, I'm sorry. The second resolution there is one that is in Mr. Dillon's area, and I know he's been asked many times about the problems and so forth, but it's an erosion problem behind Headington Oaks because our property goes all the way down to Farmington Road, and because of that, the runoff and so forth of silt has created some problems for the state, and so Maurer Stutz is being recommended as the engineering firm that we are going to hire to look into that problem for us. The amount of money appropriated for this is $25,000. The third resolution, when our highway department found out that the state is going to build a bridge or reconstruct a bridge over Route 74 at Maher Road, they thought, because they'd made some deals with the state before in regards to a project off of, was it Bell Road or Bell School Road? Scott, I can't remember what the name of that one was that they did a few years ago. They went to the state and they are recommending that the state be the one that would help us with one of our problems out there, and it's about a 540-foot area south of the bridge that they're going to build over 74. And it needs to have some new asphalt, and it also needs some milling to be done. And so we're going to have them do that for us. Plus, the state will take the responsibility of doing the engineering as well for us in that area. And the amount of money that the highway department's asking us to appropriate for that project, which the state, as I said, will do all of the work and the engineering, $65,000.
Thank you, Mr. Salzer. Are there questions? Thank you.
Did you want me to, the first one you said I didn't have my mic on, maybe they didn't hear me, so.
I'd let you go back, Phil, but there's 16 other votes that
Okay.
are no on that. So, Mr. Renault, thank you, Phil. We all heard you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did not have any resolutions. However, we did have a discussion topic on the enterprise resource planning system, and Mark and Scott gave us an update on that, and that's the software that's going to replace about 4 other current softwares that we have and then integrate with others. They've gone through the vendor selection process, and the committee will be poll voting prior to the next meeting. So there will be 2 resolutions that will be coming up for vote at the meeting. One will be awarding the contract to the vendor. The second will be to amend the contract that we have with the consultant. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Renault. And then Mr. Fennell and Ms. Relaford, I'll be speaking with you. There will be a third resolution to address the accounting of it. We've been saving for this project for a little over 6 years. There's sufficient funds in the IT service fund reserves. This project is large enough that we'll be creating a capital project fund and then moving money from those IT reserves into the capital project fund. That will require an action by the Finance Committee. So I'll talk to the 2 of you offline to give you a little bit more detail.
And I appreciate all the effort that the steering committee has gone through on this. They've done a really good job through this process. And then lastly, we were in a marathon executive session regarding labor relations.
Thank you. Did I hear marathon, did you say?
It was a marathon.
It was lengthy. Okay, well, good. That's good. Should be. Questions for the chairperson of county operations? I'm going to have one for you, Rob. The sum total of investment in the ERP system is estimated to be,
I believe $3 or $4 million.
Roughly $4 million spread over a 10-year period.
so for those of you that sit right of Mr. Fennell in our regular meetings, the sum total of IT investments in material, intellectual property, microcomputers, cabling in the course of the last 5 years is X. If I go back to being chairman of the Public Safety Committee some years back, we approved the system for the criminal justice system, and I'm just going to say it was 7, 8, 9 million, something like that. Have we thoroughly built that system out to the satisfaction of all the clients? Yes or no? The systems before that, including like building automation for HVAC and energy savings, have we optimally got everything out of those projects and those investments? And there was some IT in that as well. I just get little yellow flags in my head every time I see new information technology as a whole platform coming to the county for a lot of reasons. One, if we were to ask all the elected officials to what extent are they satisfied that we're meeting their needs. 2, to what extent is the county administrator able to fulfill his role because of the limitations or age of the IT systems and where government is today. I'm not sure we get a unanimous answer one way or another. I think we'd have a lot of opinions. And the reason this is even more important is because we assign through allocations across the system of government the cost of IT. And I don't think if we're going to invest $4 million that it's going to be free to the sheriff's department or free to the treasurer or free to the clerk. I think we should be allocating a recovery to everyone. So that's a budget item. It's not neutral, okay? If we're going to pull it out of capital and invest it across the house, we could say state's attorney too. I see dollar signs in budgets that can't be avoided or ignored. And then, of course, there's the software maintenance agreement, which typically is in the neighborhood of 20% of the intellectual property costs. So while Mr. Little, I don't know if he's in here or not, has always gotten away scot-free from my in-depth thinking about capital improvements here, not on this one, because unfortunately, Rob, it's coming through your committee. I'm really interested in what the full-on long-term costs of this system really are. I get the fact that we have been accumulating capital in that account. I don't know if it was purposed or not. Scott can certainly know. But I think this should be, if we're at the vendor selection process, I think there's another question that I'd like to ask, and I'd like it to go through finance, of course, because the should we has a whole lot of hats in governance here, and I certainly think the cost of this thing is one of those supersized questions. Whether we approved it in our business plan for this year as a capital expenditure or not, it's not relevant to me. What is relevant is there have been several systems in my 11 years here that we've invested in, and I never know whether they fully deliver what the promise was. I'm going to assume they don't. I want to know whether our elected officials or users of the systems are happy before we put some more money into this. Now, I say I am one vote, but I think we should be thinking that way. So I would appreciate some information on that between now and the next time Operations Committee deliberates, so that we don't go running off into the forest without a flashlight. Thank you, Rob. Miscellaneous, any items for the good of the order? Oh, I didn't call Mr. Fennell. Sorry, Mr. Fennell.
I think everyone was here, but we only had one resolution, and it was appropriations from budget items for the increase in pay for Mr. Sorrell as our administrator, and some other contracts that were passed, which have passed unanimously. So that was all I had.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Fennell? You're lucky. Okay. Miscellaneous, Ms. Pastucha, and then Ms. Williams.
I just want to say happy birthday to Jennifer. She's having tomorrow is a big, momentous birthday for her. So happy birthday.
None of us are guessing, so happy birthday. Ms. Williams?
I have two things. First of all, Kate, happy birthday. It's Kate's birthday today. So wishing Kate a happy birthday. Second of all, Scott, I'm just wondering when our final statue is going to be delivered for our war memorial. I've been wondering that and kept forgetting to ask.
Great question, Ms. Williams. Just last week, Mr. Salzer and I sent a letter to the sculptor. He's been, the sculptor that is, has been working with the remaining members of the steering committee that you had created when we embarked upon that memorial project on a date. The intent of the letter was to remind the sculptor that while their work was greatly appreciated, it's the county's role as the primary financier and the one responsible for perpetual maintenance to get the project over the finish line. Mr. Salzer and I have had multiple conversations, being as though the statue is from the War on Terror era, and is of a female helicopter pilot. This is actually, I don't know, Phil, if I don't know, it was your idea or if it was the late clerk, Mr. Sonamaker's idea, but the thought was to have Senator Duckworth be the keynote at the dedication. Senator Duckworth is not scheduling any public appearances right now, obviously due to the coronavirus, but I'm in regular contact with her staff in Springfield from a scheduling standpoint, and once that starts happening, they will let me know so that we can try and get something scheduled. And the communication to the sculptor was to essentially say, we've got the dedication. We'll let you know when we're going to get that scheduled, and we can work towards that. So I don't have a specific time because at this point or date as to when we'll dedicate that statue, but because it's tied to Senator Duckworth's availability.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrell. Anyone else? All right, we'll be adjourned. Thank you, everyone.